Hello, fellow Rebel Capitalists. Hope you're well. So Kamala Harris has come out with her economic plan. She's announcing this at a big rally in North Carolina. So I just saw this post on YouTube, this video of her talking about her plan, and I wanted to go ahead and go through it quickly and give you my reaction. As you can imagine, as with most politicians, the intentions are far different than what would likely be the results. In fact, with most of these plans, the results are the opposite of the stated intentions. But let's go over, let's do a quick screen share. We're going to go over to this video. I'm going to give you my reaction. We're going to go through it in double time because there's no way that I can handle listening to Kamala Harris at normal speed. That ain't going to happen. I love you guys, but I don't love you that much. So let's do the screen share. There we go. And shoot over to Miss Kamala Harris herself in double time. And let's turn up the volume so you guys can hear. And then when I have a response or give you guys some editorial, I'll just pause, look at the camera, then we'll go back to it. And then at the end, I want to pull up a couple charts, specifically the 1940s, to show you guys maybe something you should consider for your portfolio. And it starts with a G, and it rhymes with old. I'll let you guys guess what I'm referring to. That's why I put that link up there to my ultimate guide to buying that thing that starts with G and rhymes with old. But let's get into it here. Miss Kamala Harris herself.
President Biden and I took office. At that time, we sadly remember the millions of Americans that were out of work. We were facing one of the worst economic crises.
You know, that one thing, I went through this quickly. The first thing that came to my mind is I've never really listened to her speak that much, but I notice she, like Obama, sometimes you listen to them and they speak with a very, let's just say, white accent. But whenever they're speaking in front of a group of people where the majority are black, they try to add that little twang in there. I don't know what it is, but they try to add that little black tone to it. Or no, I shouldn't say black because it's not exclusive to a skin color. It's just the cultural difference in the way English is spoken by some white people and some blacks, but they try to give it that little extra oomph whenever they're talking to a group where the majority is black. And I noticed Kamala does the same thing.
In modern history. And today, by virtually every measure, our economy is the strongest in the world.
You know, probably the most difficult part of going through this whole thing is just listening to these brain dead seals just clapping. It's just so annoying.
We have created 16 million new jobs. We've made historic investments in infrastructure, in chips manufacturing, in clean energy. And new numbers this week alone show that inflation is down under 3%.
The inflation that you created. So bravo. Again, arsonist and firefighter type deal. Let's go ahead and increase the inflation rate to 9+%, and then we'll take full credit for bringing it down under 3.
And as President of the United States, it will be my intention to build on the foundation of this progress. Still, we know that many Americans don't yet feel that progress in their daily lives. Costs are still too high. And on a deeper level, for too many people, no matter how much they work, it feels so hard to just be able to get ahead. As president, I will be laser focused on creating opportunities for the middle class that advance their economic security, stability, and dignity. Together, we will build what I call an opportunity economy. An opportunity economy.
Wow, an opportunity economy. I think better said, an outcome economy where everyone is equally poor, just like Margaret Thatcher said about socialism. But you know, the overtone here is disturbing. But in all fairness, you'd hear a similar type of overtone in a Donald Trump speech or any political speech where I am going to do this, I am going to do that, we are going to do this. No, you're not. You're not doing anything. Like, you're not creating any jobs. Like, let's just bench that for a while. Let's shelf that nonsense. Let's be honest here. The average Joe and Jane, the private sector is the one that's doing all the work. All you have to do is get out of the way. Get out of the way and let people do what they do. Let the free market work. Let free market capitalism work, which isn't cronyism or crony capitalism. Completely different. What we should be doing, my favorite political speech would be a politician that goes up there and says, if you elect me, I am going to take the next 4 years off and play golf. You'll never see me. I won't do anything. I promise you. I will be the laziest president in human history. That is the guy or girl that would get my vote. Here we go. Back to the nonsense.
An economy where everyone can compete and have a real chance to succeed. Everyone, regardless of who they are or where they start, has an opportunity to build wealth for themselves and their children. And where we remove the barriers to opportunity, so anyone who wants to start a business or advance their career can access the tools and the resources that are necessary to do so.
So again, as though the government provides you the tools necessary. And if you don't have the help of mommy government, then you're never, ever going to be able to start that business. It's a message of weakness. It's a message of dependence instead of a message of independence. I think that's the best way that I can say it. Let me go over to the screen share here, make sure that we've got the good. Guys, do me a favor in the chat. Can you give me a thumbs up if the audio is sufficient? If you can hear the nonsense that is spewing out of Kamala's mouth, can you go ahead and give me a thumbs up? I just want to make sure the AV is on point before I go back here. Thank you, Sebastian. We got a thumbs up from Sebastian. All-nighter hider in the house. AV is good. Okay, cool, guys. Appreciate it. Let's get back to the drivel.
I will focus on cutting needless bureaucracy and unnecessary regulatory red tape and encouraging innovative technologies while protecting consumers and creating a stable business environment with consistent and transparent rules of the road. As president, I will bring together labor with small businesses and major companies to invest in America, to create good jobs, achieve broad-based growth, and ensure that America continues to define the future and lead the world. And key to creating this opportunity economy is building up our middle class. It is essential. The middle class is one of America's greatest strengths. And to protect it then, we must defend basic principles, such as your salary should be enough to provide you and your family with a good quality of life.
No, it shouldn't. No. So it's so much of what politicians talk about contradicts reality. And they actually contradict themselves within the same speech. Often they contradict themselves within the same paragraph and within the same sentence. They'll sit there and say how, I'm going to cut red tape. Oh, give me a come on. Come on. Kamala Harris is talking about getting rid of bureaucracy, about shrinking the size of government. And then in the very next sentence, she'll talk about price controls. So which is another way of saying I'm going to expand government. So she might as well just sit there. The whole entire speech might as well be, I'm going to shrink government, but yet I'm going to expand government. I'm going to shrink government, but yet I'm going to expand government. She might as well say that over and over and over again, because effectively that's what she's saying. We're going to give the middle class opportunities. Okay, that would be the way you do that is shrinking the size of government and getting the government distortions out of the way so the private sector can go ahead and create more goods and services and create the competition necessary to increase productivity, increase efficiencies, increase the amount of stuff, therefore bring the prices down, while at the same time those people who are producing the stuff are selling more units. You see, when prices go down due to productivity, everybody wins. Everybody. The business owner, the consumer, and the economy at large.
Such as no child should have to grow up in poverty.
Again, that this is the wrong place to start from. No child should grow up in poverty. Okay, great. Yes, we can all agree on that. But does that mean that the government should try to play a role in making sure no child grows up in poverty? Absolutely not, because the unintended consequences will ensure that more children grow up in poverty than otherwise would have. You see, this is where you've got to read a lot of Thomas Sowell, especially when he talks about two visions for the way the world works. I believe he calls it the unconstrained vision and the constrained vision. The constrained vision is definitely what I would fall, the bucket I would fall into. And the constrained vision means that there's no way you're going to eradicate all the problems in the world because we are imperfect creatures in an imperfect planet. So the best that you can do is minimize it. That's the best. But if you try to completely solve the problem, you'll create more problems than you had to begin with. So you have to accept the fact that you're always going to have poverty. You're never going to get rid of it. You're always going to have racism. You're always going to have tribalism. You're always going to have these things that would be nice if we could eradicate them, but we can't. That's not this world. That's maybe the next world that we go to, but it sure as hell ain't this one. So what you have to do is the best with what you've got. You've got to try to minimize it without creating more problems, without the solutions creating more problems.
Such as after years of hard work, you should be able to retire with dignity. And you should be able to join a union if you choose. Building up the middle class will be a defining goal of my presidency, because I strongly believe when the middle class is strong, America is strong. So in the weeks to come, I will address in greater detail my plans to build an opportunity economy. And today, I will focus on one element that's on the minds of many Americans as they pay their bills at the kitchen table.
Again, we should not call this, don't confuse this. This is not an opportunity economy. This is an outcome economy. This is an outcome economic plan.
Or walk the aisles of a grocery store. And that is lowering the cost of living. So every day across our nation, families talk about their plans for the future, their ambitions, their aspirations for themselves, for their children. And they talk about how they're going to be able to actually achieve them financially. Because look, the bills add up. Food, rent, gas, back to school clothes, prescription medication.
See, that's where she goes, like, tries to kind of go black, where she goes, food, rent, housing costs. I can't do it, but you guys know exactly what I'm saying. How she'll talk like super white and then just food, rent, housing costs. It's just so phony. It's so phony. I can't believe people buy into this. And then just the brain dead seals in the background. It's just nauseating. Let's just hear that again. I love that.
Cost of living. So every day across our nation, families talk about their plans for the future, their ambitions, their aspirations for themselves, for their children. And they talk about how they're going to be able to actually achieve them financially. Because look.
See, that's where she's going full white, but then she just switches it to like black mode.
The bills add up. Food, rent, gas, back to school clothes, prescription medication. After all that, for many families, there's not much left at the end of the month. I grew up in a middle-class household. For most of my childhood, we were renters. My mother saved for well over a decade to buy a home. I was a teenager when that day finally came, and I can remember so well how excited she was. I kind of understood what it meant, but we called her Mommy. Mommy was so excited, it just made us excited that she was so excited. Later in college, I worked at McDonald's to earn spending money. Well, some of the people I worked with were raising families on that paycheck. They worked second or even third jobs to pay rent and buy food.
As if that's not something they had any control over. right? As if the decisions they made in life didn't put them in that circumstance to begin with. I mean, come on, come on. And does this somehow imply that every single job should allow you to support a family? Of course not. That's total nonsense. In fact, when I was growing up, she starts telling this story. When George Gammon was growing up and working at places like McDonald's, the very first job I had, I was 15. I was working at a pizza place in the back washing dishes. And everyone knew that this job was not something that you aspire to when you're even in your 20s, right? This is a job for teenagers to start to understand what it's like to be responsible, show up on time. That's what these types of jobs are meant for, right? If you're 45 years old and you have a family and that job, you've made some really, really, really poor decisions within your life. And unfortunately, it is what it is, that you can't produce enough to earn more than that. Now, that said, is it the government's responsibility to come in and try to solve that problem? No, because as an aggregate total for all those people that are in that position, it's only going to make things worse. You can sit there and say, well, we'll just give them more money. Okay, great, but they're still not producing more stuff, which just means you're going to increase the cost of what they have to buy, which puts them into a worse position than they were to begin with. If you want proof of that, just go back and look at that person's purchasing power back in 2019 and compare it to what it is today. That's why we see McDonald's come out and say the $5 value menu isn't value enough, because that's the demographic that's actually eating at McDonald's for the most part. And although their nominal wages have gone up, their purchasing power has gone down. The only way that government can lower prices is by getting the hell out of the way. If government involves themselves, I can assure you, prices will go one direction. And that's straight up assuming you don't have a deflationary financial crisis in the interim.
That only gets harder when the cost of living goes up. When I'm elected president, I will make it a top priority to bring down costs and increase economic security for all Americans. As president, I will take on the high costs that matter most to most Americans, like the cost of food. We all know that prices went up during the pandemic when the supply chains shut down and failed.
Let's be more specific, Kamala. When the supply chains shut down and failed due to government intervention, you were the one that locked everyone in a cage. And you being a proxy for global governments. That no private institution said, hey, we're going to choose to lock everyone in a cage. No, that was government that did that. And therefore, it was government that created the disruption, or better said, the destruction of global supply chains. She just kind of glances over that. Just kind of, when all those supply chains got destroyed due to my policies.
But our supply chains have now improved, and prices are still too high. A loaf of bread costs 50% more today than it did before the pandemic. Ground beef is up almost 50%. Many of the big food companies are seeing their highest profits in 2 decades. And while many grocery chains pass along these savings, others still aren't. Look, I know most businesses are creating jobs, contributing to our economy, and playing by the rules. But some are not. And that's just not right. And we need to take action when that is the case.
What do you mean that's not right? You mean it's not right for businesses to set the price that they want to set? I mean, just you got to back up for a moment. I'm sure a lot of you watching this video right now have your own business. Maybe small, mid-size, large business. Just imagine someone coming in, a politician, and telling you, you know what? Your prices are way too high. It's ethically wrong for you to charge $10,000 to replace that roof. That's not right. You would sit back and say, excuse me? How do you know what my costs are? How do you know what my marketing costs are? How do you know what my labor costs are? You don't know the first thing about roofing. You don't know the first thing about my business. You couldn't run a lemonade stand. So who are you to sit there and saying that my prices are wrong? The only entities and individuals that will tell me my price is wrong are my consumers and my competitors. It's the market price, or excuse me, the marketplace. There's no politician that can do that, because no politician has the expertise that you have in your own business. Just like you don't have the expertise in bullshitting, excuse my French, that the politicians do, because that is their job. That is what they specialize in.
As Attorney General in California, I went after companies that illegally increased prices, including wholesalers that inflated the price of prescription medication, and companies that conspired with competitors to keep prices of electronics high. I won more than $1 billion for consumers. So believe me, as president, I will go after the bad actors.
Bad actors as defined by whom? Like who gets to choose who the bad actors are? You see, this is where the brain dead seals just haven't thought things through, assuming that they have the capability of doing that. Because this gives Kamala Harris the ability to just say, oh, bad actor, bad actor, bad actor. Just like, oh, misinformation, disinformation, misinformation. Therefore, we need to censor. Well, who are you censoring? Well, just the people I don't like. Because obviously, anyone that I don't like is by definition a bad actor. You see, this is the slippery slope.
And I will work to pass the first ever federal ban on price gauging on food. My plan will include new penalties for opportunistic companies that exploit crises and break the rules, and we will support.
But again, how do you define who is price gouging? Like, how do you determine if the increase in prices is justified? The bottom line is it's impossible. So what that does is that gives you power to just put anyone out of business that you choose to put out of business.
Smaller food businesses that are trying to play by the rules and get ahead. We will help the food industry become more competitive, because I believe competition is the lifeblood of our economy. More competition means lower prices for you and your families.
So how is the government going to increase competition? The way you increase competition is by getting the government out of the way and allowing the free market to work. Look, again, go back to your business. I'm sure you have competitors, right? Who is better at competing with you? Kamala Harris or your nearest competitor? It's going to be your competitor. So if you truly want to increase competition, you would get the government out of the way and let all the people in the business, the experts, actually compete with one another and bring down prices due to productivity and efficiencies.
Now compare what Donald Trump plans to do. He wants to impose what is, in effect, a national sales tax on everyday products and basic necessities that we import from other countries. That will devastate Americans. It will mean higher prices on just about every one of your daily needs. A Trump tax on gas, a Trump tax on food, a Trump tax on clothing, a Trump tax on over-the-counter medication.
I mean, here is where I partially have to agree with her. Like, if you want to throw tariffs on everything, China ain't paying for that. I'll tell you who's going to pay for that. And she's right. Now, I don't know if Trump's going to put tariffs on all of these things that she mentioned. But the bottom line is you put tariffs on stuff, and there's going to be one group that's going to pay for that. And that's going to be the American consumer.
And economists have done the math. Donald Trump's plan would cost a typical family $3,900 a year. At this moment, when everyday prices are too high, he will make them even higher. As president, I'll attack and take on the issue of the cost of healthcare. As Attorney General, I took on insurance companies and big pharma and got them to lower their prices.
This is where I almost wanted to vomit. Like literally. Imagine the audacity. Imagine the lack of just morals and ethics required to quite literally be in bed. Well, maybe not literally, but quite literally be in cahoots, figuratively be in bed with big pharma to the point where you're going out there almost every single day with your mask on, telling people that they not only have to get the medicine, but they have to get multiple medicines because it's safe and effective. Duh. It's so effective that you have to get one every 3 weeks. That's how effective it is. Now, just is Pfizer going to make 10 times the profit? Sure. Am I getting kickbacks from Pfizer? Yeah, absolutely. Am I basically a mouthpiece for Pfizer? Am I basically their spokesperson? Yeah. But when I go out and give a speech, I'm going to tell you how I am going to stick up for the little guy and fight big pharma. I mean, this is hypocrisy at a staggering level. This is like Robin saying he's going to stand up to Batman or something like. I mean, come on. These politicians are so in bed with big pharma, and I mean, do I even need to tell you that? Go back and watch her actions. Listen to what she was saying to the whole cerveza sickness. It's basically give more money to Pfizer, give more money to Pfizer, give more money to Pfizer, give more money to Pfizer. And all of a sudden, she's trying to tell the brain dead SEALs that she's going to go ahead and fight the people that she's been making billions of dollars for the last 4 years. I mean, it's nauseating.
And together with President Biden, we've gone even further. We capped the price of insulin at $35 a month and the total cost of prescription drugs at $2,000 a year for seniors. We let Medicare negotiate lower drug prices for seniors. And just yesterday, we announced that we are lowering the price by up to 80% for 10 more life-saving drugs.
I can't even. I was going to say something. I can't even do it. This is
wearing me out. And I pledge to continue this progress. I'll lower the cost of insulin and prescription drugs for everyone with your support, not only our seniors. And demand transparency from the middlemen who operate between big pharma and the insurance companies who use opaque practices to raise your drug prices and profit off your need for medicine. 2 months ago, I announced that medical debt will no longer be used against your credit score.
Oh, this is the part I love, where medical debt won't be used against your credit score. Fantastic. Why on earth would anyone pay their medical bills? Like if this isn't going against my credit score, great. Fantastic. Why am I going to pay? And if I don't pay, then that's going to impact the prices moving forward. So if you want to talk about jacking up the price of medical bills, just do this. And I can assure you medical costs will be, I was going to say 100%, probably even higher within her reign as head authoritarian and central planner.
I will work as president with states like here in North Carolina, Roy Cooper, thank you again, to cancel medical debt for more and more, millions more Americans.
Look, and I want to be very clear. Here in Medellin, medical costs and the medical care, by the way, is just as good as the United States for most things that I've experienced. And in many cases, it's better. But let me give you an example. I had an MRI at the Mayo Clinic in Phoenix back in 2000, let's call it 14. And I remember specifically, it was right around $4 or $5 grand because I paid out of pocket. I had an MRI right here in Medellin for my shoulder last year, and I noticed it was the exact same machine. Exact same. And in fact, the place that I went to here seemed even a little bit more modern than the facilities they had at the Mayo Clinic. So remember, Mayo Clinic cost me $4,000, let's just say. Here in Medellin, it cost me a whopping $250. Same exact service. Same exact service. So you have to ask yourself, why? Is it just because we don't have enough government in the United States? And if we just had more government bringing down the prices, then an MRI there would cost $250? No, it's the exact opposite. It's the exact opposite. So if you want to bring down healthcare costs, let's increase competition. Let's increase free market capitalism. And oh, by the way, let's get healthier. There's a novel idea. If you didn't weigh 400 pounds, guess what? You'd go to the doctor a hell of a lot less.
For Donald Trump, well, he wants to repeal the Affordable Care Act, which 45 million Americans rely on. 45 million Americans rely on it for healthcare. That would take us back to a time when insurance companies could deny people with pre-existing conditions. We all remember what that was. And we're not going back. We're not going back. We're not going back. And remember, and this is why we're not going back, because we do remember, he tried to cut Medicare every year he was president, threatening a program that tens of millions of seniors count on. And according to his Project 2025 agenda, he intends to undo our work to bring down prescription drugs, the cost of prescription drugs, and insulin costs. Well, we've come too far to let that happen.
I wonder if she keeps referencing insulin because 90% of the audience there is diabetic because they're morbidly obese. Just wondering.
So we're not going back on that, and let's talk about the cost of housing. So now, the housing market can be complicated, but look, I'm not new to this issue. As state attorney general, I drafted and helped pass a homeowner bill of rights, one of the first in America. And during the foreclosure crisis, I took on a big bank.
And by the way, what state has the most insane prices when you look at the ratio between price to income? Oh, that would be California. Oh boy, you gotta have some big balls. Even if you're a gal, you gotta have some whopping balls to go out there and claim that you're going to be the one that brings down housing prices when you came from the state of California. Wow.
For predatory lending with many of my colleagues, including Roy Cooper, and won $20 billion for California families when I was attorney general. So I know how to fight for people who are being exploited in the housing market. And I know what home ownership means. It's more than a financial transaction. It's so much more than that. It's more than a house. Home ownership and what that means, it's a symbol of the pride that comes with hard work. It's financial security. It represents what you will be able to do for your children. And sadly, right now, it is out of reach for far too many American families.
And why is that, Kamala? Why is that? Oh, let me guess. That's because the private sector. Let me guess. It's out of reach because we don't have enough government.
There's a serious housing shortage. In many places, it's too difficult to build, and it's driving prices up. As president, I will work in partnership with industry to build the housing we need, both to rent and to buy. We will take down barriers and cut red tape, including at the state and local levels. And by the end of my first term, we will end America's housing shortage by building 3 million new homes and rentals that are affordable for the middle class.
I'm curious how Kamala is going to do that. I would like to see here. I actually framed houses when I was in high school for a summer job, and it's tough work to say the least. I would love to see Kamala Harris put in a good week, working 7 to 4, throw on the bags. You guys know what I'm talking about if you're in construction. Throw on the bags and actually frame houses to help build those 3 million that she is referring to, because she keeps talking about how we are going to build this. Well, we are going to build this. Okay, great. So I assume that means that you're going to be on this construction site helping out. But I'm guessing that's not what she means.
And we will do that together. We will do that together. And we will make sure those homes actually go to working and middle class Americans. not just investors. Because, some corporate landlords, some of them buy dozens, if not hundreds of houses and apartments. Then they turn them around and rent them out at extremely high prices. And it can make it impossible then for regular people to be able to buy or even rent a home. Some corporate landlords collude with each other to set artificially high rental prices, often using algorithms in price fixing software to do it. It's anti-competitive and it drives up costs. I will fight for a law that cracks down on these practices.
So more price controls, more. It's again, she just contradicts herself with almost every sentence. That I'm going to decrease bureaucracy. I'm going to decrease red tape, but yet I'm going to get more involved. So I'm going to decrease red tape and bureaucracy by creating more red tape and bureaucracy. And this is effectively what she's saying. And just the demonization of producers by people that have produced nothing. It is straight out of Atlas Shrugged.
We also know that as the price of housing has gone up, the size of down payments have gone up as well. Even if aspiring homeowners save for years, it often still is not enough. So in addition, while we work on the housing shortage, my administration will provide first-time home buyers with $25,000 to help with the down payment on a new home.
Oh, fantastic. So what's that going to do to the price of housing? This is so ridiculous. Yes, give everyone $25,000 to put towards a house. And guess what? The average price of a house is going to go up by, drum roll, please, $25,000. Does nobody in the crowd, just, doesn't it dawn on them? Like, wait a minute, maybe that's going to increase prices. If we just give people more free money, maybe that's not the answer. Maybe that's going to make things worse. But no, you just get a standing ovation as though she was like Stone Cold Steve Austin just giving a stunner to The Rock. Come, oh, man. Just.
We can do this. We can do this. All to help more Americans experience the pride of home ownership and the financial security that it represents and brings. So that's my plan. But here's what Donald Trump would do. If his Project 2025 agenda is put into effect, it will add around $1,200 a year to the typical American mortgage. He's got it backward. We should be doing everything we can to make it more affordable to buy a home, not less. Finally, there's one more way I will help families deal with rising costs, and that's by letting you keep more of your hard-earned money. Under my plan, more than 100 million Americans will get a tax cut, and we will do this by restoring 2 tax cuts designed to help middle-class and working Americans: the Earned Income Tax Credit and the Child Tax Credit, through which millions of Americans with children got to keep more of their hard-earned income. We know this works. It has a direct impact on so many issues, including child poverty. We know it works. So as president, I'll not only restore...
Well, if that works, why doesn't cutting all taxes work? I'm curious. I mean, if this is so phenomenal for the economy to cut taxes over here, why not cut taxes across the board? All right. Honestly, I can't take any more of this, so you'll have to forgive me. What does this mean? What are the main takeaways here? Main takeaway is this is inflationary. I mean, assuming the banks play ball and we have bank credit that trends back up, which is a big assumption, but assuming we do, then in other words, if the money supply grows at the same rate as it did in the 1970s, as opposed to the rate that it did over the last 2 years, which is actual decline, if you're looking at M2 money or M1 money supply, then this is not only inflationary over the short run, but it's inflationary over the long run. She's just talking about more and more and more government. She's talking about more and more price controls, which, by the way, that reminds me, I wanted to go over a quick chart of the 1940s. So let's switch up the screen share. You guys bear with me. Okay, we've got the screen share switched up. Now let's go over to this chart. And so the nothing is identical as far as decade to decade. But I think the 2020s, and especially when you hear this rhetoric from Kamala Harris, and especially when you started the decade pretty much the exact same way that you started the 1940s from a standpoint of destroying supply chains, obviously for two different reasons. But you can see the similarities, and if the similarities are this close, you should expect, similar outcomes, right? And so we had a destruction of the supply chains here, and we had at the beginning of the 1940s, and we had inflation go up to 12%. Then we had price controls that were implemented. I'm having a hard time reading the fine print, right around 1945 or so. I'm not sure the exact dates, but then these price controls were lifted because they were completely unsustainable. And what happened to prices? They just went completely parabolic to a point where they were at their highest level measured, way higher than we had in the 1970s. It's weird because the 1970s, everyone references that as the United States inflationary decade. When if you look at the spikes were actually higher in the 1940s due to a destruction of supply chains and price controls. And I would also argue massive government intervention distorting the economy. And not just, they in the 1930s, it was the same nonsense with an economic stimulant. When the government gets involved, that's not an economic stimulant, although it may be in the very short term. In the long run, it's an economic sedative. So when you hear someone talk about fiscal stimulus, just replace the word stimulus with sedative. And then you'll understand the difference between the intention and the likely result of that policy. So you get all of these economic sedatives in the 1930s, and then you get the destruction of the supply chains, you get the price controls, and then you get these massive spikes in inflation, followed by these collapses of actual deflation as a result of the economy contracting, and then another wave of consumer price inflation getting up to almost 10%. So obviously no certainties, only probabilities, but especially when you listen to this rhetoric from Kamala Harris, I would expect something very similar throughout the rest, let's just say she gets elected, over the next 4 to 8 years, where obviously I can't give you any personal investment advice, but for me, that's why every one of my portfolios starts with one thing. I talked about it at the beginning of this live stream. That's gold. Gold. It starts with gold. Even the kind of trading, more aggressive type portfolio that I have in Rebel Capitals Pro, it still starts with gold. That's the insurance policy. And gold insures against a lot of things. A lack of liquidity over the long run, against consumer price inflation, but really it insures you against government insanity. And one thing is guaranteed. Throughout the rest of the 2020s, the government insanity will not decrease. It will only increase. This is as close to certain of an outcome or scenario as we have. So if you want my ultimate guide to buying gold that I did with the gold legend himself, Dana Samuelson, you can check it out at georgegammon.com/goldbug. That's georgegammon.com/goldbug. We'll put that ultimate guide to buying gold in the description and the pinned comment. On that bombshell, guys, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. As always, make sure that you're standing up for freedom, liberty, free market capitalism, which means less government. That's the path forward to prosperity. See you in the next video.